Hello and welcome back to Retfurb. So on today's video I've got this Cannondale with a super fatty D Headshok on it. So I'm going to be showing the basics of servicing the fork and servicing the damper. You can see I'm just trying to point out here that it's an air shock. So I've done another fatty fork previously, so this is slightly different because it's an air shock. Same basic principles apply on it, apart from obviously the air chamber. So they work not too bad. The bearings on the frame are absolutely knackered, so they will be replaced. This bike will be a project bike that will be on the channel at some point. So I'm just removing the top cap, which is just for the damping, and then just getting a rubber mallet, and then you can just knock the fork out. Now, I recommend removing the dial rod out of the top of the fork before you hammer it. It's just a flathead screwdriver, just unscrew it and it'll just come right out. I did it with it in there. I've done it before like that, never had an issue, but I would recommend probably just taking it out. So you can see here the fork's out. I'm just moving it up and down, showing that it's moving okay. So now the first thing we need to do is get a pin tool. This is a Park Tool SPA1. So we just need to undo this top cap, and then that'll release from the outer tube, and then we can slide that piece down. Now for this part, now you need a specialist tool. Now I have done it previously with just the pin tool, but at this occasion I made it out of a 22mm socket. So I just ground it out and made the small notches at the bottom, so that will locate in and undo it. Obviously you need to be very careful here. You don't want to scratch anything and potentially cause issues with leaking oil after the shafts are scratched. So I've wrapped it in some cloth as well. I made sure there's no sort of burrs on the tool after I made that as well. And once you've undone it a bit, normally they come quite loose quite quick. So then you can just do it by hand and then just pull that out. So the damper, you can see it going up and down okay, but it's not really doing much, so that'll need sorting. There's a sill on the top as well, which will need replacing. To be honest, I ended up replacing a few of the outer sills on this. It was leaking a little bit at the bottom sill, so I replaced that as well. It's worth checking them. Obviously, if you've got issues with it holding air, then the chances are it's probably one of the sills that's doing it. So now you can see inside here. It's difficult to see actually, but a couple of the bearing faces had moved slightly, so that will need sorting out when it goes back together. So again, now we need the pin tool to release this nut or collar. Just being careful again when you're doing this. So now you can undo that nut collar and just slide that down. Now at this point you need to put a piece of inner tube over just to hold the bearings in place. You need to make sure that when you pull this off, you know exactly where the bearings went when they came off, so they go in exactly the same place. You don't really want to be putting it in the wrong way, because there's obviously different thicknesses of bearings, and even from factory they might have fitted a different thickness. So you can see there, look, the needle bearings, they'd actually moved slightly, so again that'll need sorting when it comes back to it. So I normally just put some rag down inside to hold the inner bearings that are on the tube. It does say in the manual to use part of an inner tube and blow it up. It's just a bit of a pain doing it that way, I think, so I've just put that in there. It holds it fine. As long as they're not going to fall out when you pull this off, you'll be fine. So you just need to be careful, make sure it's doing that, and just sliding that off. So now again, just making sure you know exactly where each one comes from, just laying it out that you know yourself where it came from off of the fork. So this fork inside isn't the best of conditions really. I mean, ideally you'd probably want to replace all these bearings. The small roller bearings, they seem okay, they're not too bad. A little bit worn, sort of marked from where it hasn't been serviced probably for a long time, but it's okay. I think it'll be okay when it goes back together, so I'm just going to clean them all up. The same goes for the ones that are on the inside of the tube as well. So now I'm just removing the small rubber O-ring, this sort of a bump stop I suppose at the bottom of the tube. And just giving it a quick wipe off. Now just undoing the valve for the air. So this section can be knocked out as well. You can knock that right out so it comes out in one lump with the damper. So this little piece was also inside of the tube. which goes on the bottom of the damper. I didn't notice it to start with, so that is actually snapped off. I did look online to see if I could find a replacement, but I couldn't, so I'm going to do a little fix on that shortly, which you'll see. But I'm just continuing to clean out everything. So you want to make sure that you're cleaning all the old dirt and grime and anything else that's in there before you put it back together. So here is the part that snapped off. The other little piece of the plastic is still inside the bottom of the damper, which I'll be taking out shortly, and just putting this rubber back on here. So I've got a small screwdriver just to try and remove that piece that was stuck in the bottom part of the damper rod. Luckily it came out quite easily. So I'm going to glue these two parts together, which won't on its own sort this. That'll probably break off the second I try and screw it in. So what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to tap a little thread down through the middle. There was a hole already there, so I'm going to tap a little thread, and then I'm going to put a screw down through to hold it together. Now obviously chances are this will be fine on most forks, but for some reason on this one it's broke, so I thought this was a good way of doing it. The screw goes in, holds it nice and tight. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on there as well just to hold it, and the worst case scenario, if that screw does come out, it's only going to go back up into the damper rod at the bottom and there's nowhere for it to go. It'll just rattle around in there, so it won't cause any damage. It shouldn't do anyway. It's quite a lot of material in there to thread to, and obviously with the Loctite that'll hold it. I mean, I could have just put some super glue on there, but I thought I'd use Loctite, and then just screwing it back in there nice and tight, and yeah, it seems to be holding pretty well, that. And now I'm just going to go through and just continue cleaning some of the seals and bits and pieces that go on it. Again, I probably won't be showing everything on here, all the whole in-depth of the cleaning, but you just go around and clean everything and just making sure that it goes in okay, and does. It screws in nice and tight. So now I'm just going to go around and just remove some bits off the damper, get rid of these old seals that are no good, and then we can give it a service also. So now you need the pin tool, which is the Park Tools pin tool again, and just go in and undo the inner ring, as you can see here, and then it will expose the inside of the damper, and then we can then pour out the old oil. And you'll see that there's barely any oil left in there. So yeah, that definitely needed doing. Just continuing cleaning. So with this damper, it was a little bit different than the last one I did. I did a Fatty SL fork. I haven't actually done the video for it yet, but I did a Fatty SL before this, and it had a small little bleed screw on the outer side of the damper. Now on this one it doesn't have it, so I was a little bit unsure when it came to bleeding it. So all I did is I just filled it up to the top and screwed it down, making sure there's no air in it. Obviously bleeding it, we'll get to that in a minute and I'll show you, but just making sure that there was no air left in it, and just keep checking it and then screwing it in. If it felt like it wasn't quite right, I just undid it again and just topped up the oil again. I left it for a little while, let it bleed, and it seems okay now. So that little seal that I've just removed there that I'm cleaning, I actually replaced that seal because it wasn't sealing up properly afterwards. And now just spraying some degreaser inside just to clean that out. Now just applying some oil, just some fork oil just around the side of the shaft, and then I can just slide that back in. This was a little bit tight, so you just need to be a bit careful not to damage that lower sill. And now just using a funnel just to put the fork oil in. So I'm using a 7.5 weight fork oil. There's various weights you can use according to the manual depending on what you require. So it's worth checking the manual. I will link that in the description as well. Just check through it and then you can decide what you want to do. So when you put the oil through, you just need to carefully pump it up and down, which will get the air and circulate the oil. Obviously you don't want to pull it right at the bottom past the seal, otherwise the oil will pour out everywhere, which I've made the mistake doing myself. So yeah, like I say, this one I'm just going to fill right to the top. I'll leave it for an amount of time just to let the air escape and make sure there's no air in there, and then screw it down, and then that'll hopefully then fill it right up to top, and that, you know, that's the way then to get the air out, and it bleeds it through. Like I say, the other one I did had a small little screw on the side where you release it slightly, and as you do the cap up, it just comes out a little bit out that screw, and then you just screw it back in, whereas this one didn't have it. So I think this is the right way of doing it. It seems to be working absolutely fine. It damps properly now with no issues. And I'm just going around here just cleaning up some of the bits. And now moving on to the bearings. So I'm just going to show the process of each one. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. I'm just going to do one, show what I do on that, and then, you know, you'll get the process exactly the same as what I'll do on all of them. Obviously here I'm just giving them a quick clean first. I do give them another wipe over after, just to make sure that all the oil and dirt and everything is removed before fitting it back in. And now just removing the bearings from inside the tube. Just making sure, again, you know exactly where they come from within the tube. And just giving that a clean out. And like I say, you want to make sure you give it a good clean all the way through on all the parts before you put it back together. I don't show the whole process of me cleaning it like thoroughly on here, but that's what you need to do. And now going through doing the process of what I did to clean them. And like I said at the beginning, they're not perfect, to be honest. Ideally they need replacing, but they will go again. They're not really bad. They're not the worst ones I've had. The fork that I did, and I showed the video on here previously showing, you know, what happens when you don't look after them. That was probably the worst fork I've done for the condition of everything inside. These ones I'm just going over a bit of wire wool and just a little bit of 2000 wet and dry, just to remove some of the worst parts on them. Just gently sort of removing it so there's not sort of any grooves or anything that's been marked in there from where it's been left. And then exactly the same on all the rest of the parts, just going over with a bit of wire wool and just cleaning off any of the worst of it. And now just putting the inner tube back over, and then this will hold the bearings in place whilst we refit it all. So I'm just putting a small amount of grease on the bearings before I slide them in. This will just help with further corrosion on them. It'll help protecting them in the future. Just making sure when you fit those bearings in, they just sit flush with the top of the tube. And then again onto the needle bearings, just covering them with grease. And just slotting them in place, making sure you've got these the right way around. And then there should be 11 needle bearings just sat out the top, above the top of the tube. Now you may need to adjust it slightly. I had a bit of an issue with, I think it was this fork, or it might have been the Fatty SL, I can't remember, but with one of them I did 11 bearings at the top of the tube, so the 11 were just sticking out proud, but it actually needed to be slightly less. When you pushed it down, it had like a bit of play in it, so I've sorted that out, readjusted it, and it was absolutely fine. So it does say in the manual 11 bearings, but I would just double check or make sure you've got it seated correctly when you do it, and if there's any issues you may have to just adjust it slightly. And then just putting some rag back in the tube just to hold the bearings inside of there when you slide them in. So again, greasing them all up and just slotting them in place, making sure that they're sitting flush with the bottom of the tube. And just continuing to do the same on all of them, just greasing them up and doing exactly the same. And now this is the hardest part, slotting it back in. Now you need to make sure the tube's on the right way around as well. So when you do this, you need to be holding everything in place as you're sliding it on. It might take 3, 5, 10, whatever amount of time to get this right. Sometimes they move slightly off as you push it in. So you need to just gradually slide it in place and make sure that all the bearings are going in at the same point. There's none going in any further than the others. Making sure the flat bearings are not moving as you're sliding it on. Yeah, it can be a bit tricky at times, but that's the way of doing it. You just need to make sure that if it's not gone right, you just slide it back off and reset and do it again. It can be a bit of a pain in the butt, to be honest, but it's yeah, it's alright. You'll get there in the end with it. And then just doing that collar back up and just making sure that it's sliding all okay. And just removing the inner tube off of that now. We don't need that anymore. And just using the pin tool to lock the bottom nut back in place. Now with this, I had to make a small piece out of a 3D printer to hold the spring in place. You can just see it there out of grey. It was missing off the fork, so I did that just to hold the spring to make it so it wasn't sloppy and moving around. And then you can just slide that damper back in and then screw the castle nut back in place. So again, using the special tool. Now ideally, if you've got the proper tool, it'd make it a lot easier, or you can potentially use the pin tool if you can get in there enough. It just depends on whether you can get in there okay. Like I say, you don't want to damage anything. And now just doing the top cap back up and then replacing the valve for the air valve. This was leaking slightly beforehand. So yeah, that's basically it now. I'm just going to repressurize it, check everything's okay, and yeah, we're all done. Obviously it needs a boot put back on, and I will grease around that area as well when I put the boot back on, but it's going to be painted at some point, so I'm just leaving that off as it is now. But yeah, that's it. I hope that helps. If you've got any questions or you want to know any more, please do let me know, add a comment, and I'll answer as quickly as I can. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video, it's really appreciated. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.